It is said that a group of companions comes to the Prophet ﷺ on one occasion asking him which individual is the best. أَيُّ النَّاسِ أَفْضَلُ. And the Prophet ﷺ, rather than responding in specific, he gives them an answer that's more generic, but sets for us a standard by which we could aspire to fall into that category of being the best individual. Which individual, which person is the best, Ya Rasulullah? And the Prophet ﷺ, he responds, كُلُّ الْمَخْمُومِ الْقُلُوبِ صُدُوقِ اللِّسَانِ, that each one that has a heart that is makhmoom and a tongue that is trustworthy. And the companions, they say to the Prophet ﷺ that we know what a trustworthy tongue is, but what is a heart that is makhmoom? For us to understand, perhaps some of you who speak the Arabic language, when we say something to the effect of قَمَمْتُ الْغُرْفَةِ, we're saying that the room has been swept, meaning with like a broom or a mop or something to that effect. And a heart that is makhmoom is a heart that has been swept of any clutter, it's been free of any kind of debris or any kind of dirt. And the Prophet ﷺ, he expounds on this when he responds to the companions' question of what is a heart that is makhmoom, and he defines for them saying, هُوَ تَقِي وَالنَّقِي لَا إِثْمَ فِي وَلَا بَغِي وَلَا غِلَّ وَلَا حَسَدٍ. That it is one that is taqi, it is one that is conscious of the divine, it is naqi, it is clean, it is pure. In it there is no oppression or aggression and no bitterness and no envy. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant us all hearts that are like this. When we are understanding this conversation of how do we utilize spirituality as a means by which we can attain happiness, I think this is where we want to start the discussion and the conversation, because it's not necessarily about what do I have of the world that is external, but how am I really taking care of and understanding the world that is internal? How am I in a place where I'm so attuned to the realities of my inside, where I really understand the importance of that heart that exists within me? That morsel of flesh that he says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, if it is good, everything else is good. ألا وإن في الجسد مضغة إذا صلحت صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسدت فسد الجسد كله ألا وهي القلب. That indeed there is a mudgha, there is a morsel of flesh in your jasad, in your being. That if it is set aright, then your entire being is set aright. But if it is not good, then your entire being will not be good. Indeed, it is your heart. And the question that I would want to pose to you as we go into this conversation is for you to take a look inside, to take a look internal and take a moment to really reflect, not in a self-deprecating way, not in a way that lands you to hate on yourself in any capacity, but with an air of open and honest, productive criticism. How do you take care of your heart? What do you do to take care of that most significant and most important morsel of flesh that exists in your body? Is it something that you are conscious of? It is something that you are mindful of? Or is it something that perhaps you have really no understanding of whatsoever? You'll have to forgive me. I've been sick for the last couple of weeks. I've been losing my voice. And if I sound really, really more monotonous than I usually am, I apologize in advance. I'm hoping that my voice is going to last through whatever it is that I need it to last through. If I lose it, you get to eat earlier. So if it goes out, I know what kind of dua you're making. Thanks a lot. When the Prophet ﷺ is given the designation of being Nabi, prior to our being in this world, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he tells us in the hadith, إِنَّ اللَّهَ نَظَرَ فِي قُلُوبِ الْعِبَادِ, that indeed Allah Azza wa Jal, He looks into the hearts of His servants. فَوَجَدَ خَيْرَ قُلُوبِ الْعِبَادِ قَلْبَ مُحَمَّدٍ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. And he finds that the best of hearts is the heart of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so he chooses him for himself. And he endows him with the responsibility of being the messenger. And the idea is so critical for us to understand because the Prophet ﷺ needs to be in a place where his heart reaches that plateau, it reaches that station, because it is his heart that will be responsible for engaging other hearts. It is his heart that will be given the mandate to really have a certain care and nurture and a certain love for being able to guide other hearts. And if he is in a place where he does not necessarily have that capacity, it will make his mission that much more difficult. Where the Prophet is now being utilized to understand the prerequisites and qualifications that Allah has set for him. He's not looking at what land did the Prophet come from. He's not looking at his culture, his country of origin, the language that he speaks. But when he is trying to see who will be endowed with the title of being the last messenger to this world, his qualifications and prerequisites are quite clear. He's seeing who's got a good heart. I want you to think about it, again, not in a way that necessitates self-deprecation, but in a way that lets you take a look within and to really answer the question, how are you taking care of yours? If we were to sit down in a one-on-one conversation, regardless of the religious you practice, regardless of your cultural background, regardless of anything else, you and I sitting one-on-one, no other ears, no other eyes, nothing else is there. Full confidence is just me and you talking to each other, and I said to you, brother, sister, how do you take care of your heart? What would your response be? What would you be able to say, not in a frame where you are trying to say right and wrong or good and bad or be unnecessarily profound because you want to say the best thing, but real, raw and honest, and being able to be true to yourself and say that, yes, this is what I'm doing. But being able to take a further look in and say, I'm not necessarily doing anything at all. We live at a time where society emphasizes this pursuit of individual needs, where a very pervasive egocentricity has permeated our community to a full effect and impacts us to such a level where we don't necessarily understand what it's doing. We get to a place where everything is about me feeding myself, me getting my needs met, me doing what I need to do for me. And within that frame, I'm not necessarily conscious of how I can move beyond short-lived complacency and short-term satisfaction. Rather, I want to be able to pursue contentment and rida, but I don't know how that can be done when all I'm doing is feeding my ego. And when my nafs becomes so strong and the tyranny of it is so in control and my heart is not able to combat it, and in my deeds and decisions that emanate and manifest in this world, I'm looking to find the presence of my qalb, but rather than the presence of my qalb or a qalb that's attached to the pursuit of a relationship with the divine, more so what's there is my whims and my desires. Me being able to just feed myself rather than me being able to really feed my soul. The satiation of our stomachs is not a hard act to accomplish. But if you want to get to a place where you're satisfying your soul, it's going to necessitate feeding it with things that are not necessarily pursuant of this world, but something that feeds it from elsewhere. ليس الغنى عن كثرة العرض ولكن الغنى غنى النفس. The true richness is not having an abundance of things from the earth, but true richness is having a richness of your soul. And we want to get to a place where it's not just living in this very utopian-esque set of ideals, but we deal with the reality of the circumstance. For me to be content, for me to have fulfillment, is not to exist in the denial of my emotions. Our Prophet ﷺ was a human by every standard. He goes with Abdurrahman ibn Auf to go and visit his son Ibrahim. They leave for moments, and when they come back, Ibrahim is breathing his last breaths. And the Prophet ﷺ, as his child has literally died, is shedding tears. Abdurrahman ibn Auf says to him, Ya Rasulullah, what is this? And the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Oh Abdurrahman, oh Ibn Auf, this is mercy. The Prophet ﷺ loses his wife Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha and his uncle Abu Talib in the same year. The historians of the prophetic biography term this year in his life the year of depression, the year of anxiety, the year of sorrow. He got sad. It wasn't something where he just went on as if nothing impacted him, the passing of his loved ones, but it hurt and he let it feel itself within him. That the Prophet ﷺ, years after Khadija passes away, and the battle of Badr has ensued, and he is sitting with his companions, and they have people who are coming to barter the emancipation of some people who are taken as captives of war. And a necklace comes into the hand of the Prophet from a young woman who we find out later on is his daughter. And she has come to barter the freedom of her husband who was taken as a prisoner of war. And the necklace that she utilizes to barter it is the necklace of her mother Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. Years after she has passed away, the necklace comes from her hand into the companion's hand, into the Prophet's hand. And the Prophet sees the necklace and he starts to cry because he remembers his wife. He remembers that woman who stood with him when nobody else stood with him. He remembers that woman who was there with him when nobody else was there with him. From day one until the day she left from this world, she was there as his supporter. And the tears start to again drop from his eyes because his heart remembers. So I want you to understand this, because if you can't frame for yourself what real contentment is, and you put it into a place where you are disillusioned and you think that it means that you can't be sad, and that's what gives you an indication that you have a solid relationship with Allah and your heart's doing okay, you're not really being real with yourself. To shed tears and to feel sad at loss is not a problem. To be in a place where you have to express grief and anxiety, that's not an issue. But you want to be able to deal with reality, because Islam is about reality. It's not about living in a bubble or treating the life that we know of the Prophet ﷺ and the wisdom that we derive from it, or the parables and the narratives that we find in the Quran as simple stories. This is reality. And within the frame of that reality, we find people who go through challenges, they go through trials, they go through tribulations, but their goodness is not assessed because they are good and everything is always working out for them. Their goodness is assessed because when they fall on their face, they know how to get back up on their feet. And if somebody else in their presence falls down, they know how to extend a hand and help them back up, rather than stepping and kicking them when they're in their most moment of need. You have to know what happiness and contentment is, and perhaps what is not, for you to be able to go on a path to pursue it. And if you give abode into your